You're listening to Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, we have Victoria on today. She's going to tell us all about what's going on with the city of Burleson and, talk a little bit about last night's meeting, but we're going to spend more of our time talking about what's going on in Austin, because that's going to impact all you guys out there in my vast listening audience. And I think you need to be paying attention, because I think what's going to happen, personally, is they're going to have some very significant legislation passed, and you'll be sending your emails to the wrong person.
It's going to impact our operations for sure.
Yeah,
how we plan potentially, how we vote potentially.
Well, you may have that vote taken from you.
Yeah.
And so in front of her, I have the Dallas Morning News in their opinion section. They have a big article about what is the title here? Is a local rule under life support, on life support? Yeah, that's right. And so I don't know how many of y'all read the Dallas paper, but that's a big column, and I read it through it, and it's going to affect our planning and zoning. It'll affect when our elections are. It could affect our tax rates, certainly, on and on and on. So we're going to talk a lot about that and the property tax situation with the CAD and whatnot. And I always think when I sit across the table from you, you asked for this. You wanted this.
When I got tea this morning from HTO, and the owner with Paul was there, and he was like, are you going to keep doing this? I said, as long as the people have me, I love it. Mm-hmm. It's tough.
Well, that shows that you need some help, but whatever. But let's talk about people who don't need help, but they help us, and that'd be our wonderful sponsors, starting with Otto over at Our Place Restaurant. I'm going to be missing that Thursday morning gab session I have with my Sunday school men for another 5 weeks, and then DB will be done, and I can go and straighten them out again. But it's always great food and great service. And what I like about it, I walk in there and they know what I want.
I know. I love that.
Yeah.
I love when people recognize you and they're like, oh, Victoria, I got your iced. I love their iced coffee drinks. There's one, I think, that's caramel. And there's a sweet girl that always puts extra caramel in the cup for me. Like I need that. But it's so good.
You're fine. And but the kids like it still. Is it still the bribe?
Oh my gosh.
If you don't straighten up during Mass, you're going to, not going to get a pancake or whatever.
And that's the best part is they know how Audrey wants her pancake with the sprinkles and the whipped cream. Oliver eats so good there. I think we should have stock in their turkey sausage because he only wants it from Our Place.
Well, that's about the only place I'd eat it. I like sausage.
You like rural style.
The real thing. Like on my pizza, for example, at Gina's place, I do like the pizzas there.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. We ate there Sunday, and we heard Susie, and she did phenomenal. She played some Stevie Nicks. And
she is really good.
It was a good crowd. There was a wait for some people, and so good pizza, good time.
It's become a thing.
It has.
Otto told me when they first started doing that, the crowd was about what it was. Now it's become kind of like, well, it's Sunday night. Let's go see who's playing over at Otto's or
Susie
Gina's.
said, you should have texted me. I could have reserved a table for you. Dan McClendon had a little sign that said reserved. I was like, oh he must know people.
Oh, brother. He's name dropping, was he? Well, anyway, you know where it's at, and it's good. So also,
it's really good. And the service is good there too.
Yeah, it is. A lot of them are the same old.
A lot of the same faces. Yes,
Our Place people. Old Pro Roofing will be out there for you. I mean, the weather. I get disappointed when they get it all keyed up for heavy duty weather, and then we get nothing. It's like, hey, I'm all keyed up.
But I'm sure he's still answering calls about that random hailstorm that we had at 5 o'clock in the morning.
He is. He's busier than a one-legged man at a butt-kicking contest, as they would say.
Good for him.
817-734-2756. And they go all over the DFW. Even if we got spared, a lot of the northern part of the Metroplex got hit.
You got to call somebody you trust for sure.
And we want to keep it hometown because, we got a lot of roofers out there, the DFW area, and a lot of them are really good. We got some good ones as well as Old Pro here in town. We have several good roofers, but Old Pro is, home folks, and they're in Old Town. And so you want somebody you can get a hold of. Also, thank you to Jeff Kelly at Jeff Kelly Realty. He's still your neighbor, isn't he?
He is. Just lives down the road.
817-781-0546. 817-720-6300 will get you in his office, which is at the Wethington Agency. But he spends a lot of time on the road, like all real estate people do. It's a hard living. I admire people that do well at it, but still, it's just a tough way to make a living. But he does good.
That's good.
Or does well, which is English. I don't know. Anyway, Jeff at jeffkellyrealty.com will get you his email. And after you've been hard day of house shopping, you want to go work out over at HotWorks.
Oh, I miss it. Did you notice this boot I have on my foot?
I did. I was going to ask you about that in a minute. Is that still an issue, is it?
It is.
Well, doggone it.
I know, but I miss working out.
Yeah.
When I see friends posting their HotWorks pictures, I'm just
And
sad.
y'all, I know how y'all are. You're probably thinking, I'm just sitting here getting big. No, you're not. You're doing great. No, you're no different than my wife.
It's just different. It's in a hot sauna, and so it just loosens your muscles. You get a good stretch. You get a good workout. Highly recommend for somebody that's looking for. And they're open 24 hours. You have your own code, so you just go in there when you're available, and you take a class. They're pre-recorded, and they alternate. There's a schedule posted. I love HotWorks.
Well, I do too. And I like the fact that it is a safe environment. I've been over there several times, to sponsor care, as I call it, to check in, let them know I'm still around and I appreciate their business and whatnot. And it's not just a bunch of, staff members. These people are trained. So if I tell people if they ask me about HotWorks, I say, well, what do you want to see happen? They go, well, I really don't know. So, well, they'll figure it out for you. If you want to have some certain results or something like that, they'll tell you which one you need to be involved in and something like that. So you don't need to even have a clear idea what kind of workout you want. They'll say, oh, well, you want to lose weight here, or you want to, strengthen your core, or fill in the blank. Here's what you need.
Core strength is that's a big focus of theirs. But you need your core for so many things. So many things.
They got to hire you.
I know.
Also, thank you to Tiffany at Local Life Magazine at 30,000 Homes. Just got theirs last week. Did you get yours?
I did.
And I was on the cover. I haven't seen it yet.
Now that you stumped me.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. But anyway, because really, the ads are what people get. They look at that for the specials and the deals, but they also have good articles. And so I know last month it was like on home services and whatnot. So
That's right, it was.
Really, it's always nice to see people on the cover. Anyway, Local Life Magazine, also locallifetx.com will get you their website. Also, I don't know, did you see Cody O'Brien last night at Burleson Buzz?
I don't believe so.
Because, he just had a second child, he and his wife.
Fantastic.
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
Aww.
So that's probably why you didn't see him. So he'll be back on the duty soon. I don't know when exactly, but now he was putting on his Facebook page his new child. And
sweet.
Just look back to those days and think, thank God I'm done with that.
I agree. It's so much work. I have a goddaughter who lives around the corner from me. She's almost 6 months, and I love to squish on her and talk to her and then say goodbye. Like, I don't miss the sleepless nights. I don't
really. A goddaughter, is this somebody I would know by any chance? Okay.
No.
Like one of your high school friends or whatever?
No, they're a sweet family. We met. They were retired from the Army, and then they picked Burleson on a map and moved there.
I've heard that story before. well, they want to come to this area, and they say, okay, I want to live in the DFW area. Where's a good town? And and I've heard more than one person pick Burleson because of its location, schools and police, and because of
all the wonderful services,
the great city council they hear about.
And they lived in a hotel for 2 weeks, and then they happened on a house that's just around the corner from us. So
that's
3
handy.
sweet little girls, and they're awesome.
What a deal. Anyway, it's $50 a year, so it's a real cheap subscription. So help him keep up with the news. Help
you know what I love are the stories like about sports and local the things that we miss when we used to have a paper. You would see your somebody's kid that you recognize, or just fun, feel good stuff.
Well,
I like
that's
that
what
he's
I'm
covering.
trying to do on the radio, and I use his material on that. So we swap the material so that it really works well for us. Also, Medicare counseling and therapy. This is a new one. I don't know if they weren't part of the roster when you were last here.
No.
This is a gentleman named Jerry Kavanaugh, and Medicare now covers for most people counseling services, grief counseling and emotional counseling, things of that nature, and that's what he provides. He, as far as like getting on Medicare, he can give you advice, but he'll send you somewhere else to do it. He's not. That's not like I'm not on Medicare. I need to go through the process, because some people got confused, I guess, that he was counseling about.
Oh, to get on.
And I said no. It's if you're on Medicare, and let's say you had a loss, which a lot of us will at this age.
Right.
I'm about a year and a half, 2 years away from Medicare myself. And if you have losses, our generation doesn't really first thing think of therapy. And the second thing we think of if we do is we can't afford it.
Yep.
And so this will help you with that.
It used to just be considered like a luxury. That's something that doesn't fit in my budget, or that's something that I don't have time to fit in.
Or rich people do.
Your mental health is so important.
Well, I agree that the Medicare should be picking it up because your mental health, emotional health translate to better physical health. And
absolutely.
So in a way, you're probably going to be saving money, Medicare would be, by trying to prevent some of these things.
Yes. Take things before, preventative. What are things that we can catch on the front end instead of letting them exasperate and become a lot more expensive?
Well, you catch him at 817-992-8034. His office is the third floor of that building with Rio Mamba and the Rim. If you want to get to his office, there's a door right by Rio Mamba, and you get in, go up the elevator, boom, there you are. I'll spell out his email because it's kind of from the Stone Age. We kind of was teasing him about that. GFCAVANA@swbell.net. That takes you back.
Southwestern Bell.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So he said, Jerry, you might want to bump your game up a little bit. Josh was like, what is southwesternbell.net?
How about Google?
Yeah. He's like, Gmail. Everybody has Gmail.
Everybody has Gmail. It's like when you see AOL.
Or FlashNet. That was my first one.
FlashNet. That's old too.
Yeah. Well, I'm old, so whatever. How I first got on FlashNet is 3 of their guys, I know their computer jockeys, were in my class. This is about 97, when you were probably in junior high then, I guess, or something like that. And they were in my class, and I said, I'm going to get a home computer, but I don't know how to do this internet thing. And the 3 of them and I went to Computer City, and we got a computer. A big old honking thing, $2,500.
I'm sure.
And they were all working for FlashNet, so they hooked me up with that. It was the dial-up.
Oh, yes. I remember the sound. It's a sound that you almost cannot forget. What
got to me was, I always said this in class, who was the first band to have a song to download? It's a well-known band. It's not some obscure band. Really? It's the first one to put it on the internet for you to download into your computer.
I don't know.
Aerosmith, all right?
Oh, okay.
I don't remember the song, but they put it out there, and I remember the kids next day, yeah, I got that song from Aerosmith. It only took me 9 hours to download it. Oh, man, I was in the middle of it, and somebody called.
Yes.
Yes. And
it would kick you off.
You're right. Or people, what would happen is they're all downloading, and as a prank, kids would call each other 2 a.m. to knock their buddies off just to irritate them, and like... I said, you boys, I'm not giving y'all enough homework. That's
I just remember when I went to college and you plugged in Ethernet and it was so fast and it didn't have noise. And it was just, wow, what is this?
I remember seeing Facebook in its original form. You ever seen it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I was on MySpace before I was on Facebook.
You getting all this, Josh?
Oh, he was still young.
No, I'm tracking with you guys.
Okay. You've heard of MySpace?
You've heard of MySpace?
Yeah.
The cool part was you could add me a song, and as you scrolled your page, whatever tune was.
Well, I understand we have something else to talk about, though. But I know I get often in these sidetracks when we start reminiscing about the old days, and if you're acting like you're part of the old days. I mean,
this boot ages me for sure.
Well, how is that going?
Oh, I don't know. It's going. I start PT on Monday, so let's pray that I can get it back in working order. I just need all mobility back so I can wear my high heels again. That's really what my big fear is.
Are you going to be at the BOF meeting next week?
I will be at the BOF
good.
meeting,
It's lots going on with that, but that's another show.
Going on. Yeah, we need to focus on that on a show. Let's dedicate one in the future for that.
I've already told Daniel.
Good.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
He's got me on penciled in.
Good.
As far as the newspaper article here about the local rule, what I read about it and what I've been reading about it over the last couple of months is that the state of Texas is taking more and more autonomy away from the local cities. Now, they've been doing this for a while.
Oh, yes. Every legislative session. I think they said something like over 2,000 bills alone were introduced this session that would directly impact the way we do business at the local level.
I don't understand really what their motivation is. My thinking is that Dan Patrick and his crew down there, they look at Austin and think this liberal hippie blue town has gone too far and therefore we need to rein them in.
I completely agree with that.
And they
paint us all with the same brush.
Right.
These local governments are taking advantage. They're power hungry. Let's just paint them all with the same brush and say the way that development looks in Austin is how it should look. We're going to write out how that should look and paint the whole state of Texas in the exact same light. And what works in one city doesn't work in another.
What I don't think the Republicans down in Austin have really clued in on. They're so used to being the dominant party in the state. It didn't conceive in their mind that one day they may not be. would they want this power in the Democrat Party's hands to mandate, for example, City of Burleson have, I don't know, things that local people would oppose?
Right. I mean, I look at this one quote alone that says something about, SB 15, a vision for housing that is smaller than my 2-car garage. Now, tell someone in Burleson that from here on, all the homes in our community are going to be smaller than a 2-car garage. That doesn't fit. There are areas we need to, local control is important. We need to be able to take in input from citizens and then apply that community-wide. And it needs to be an ongoing process. Sometimes what fit even 2 years ago doesn't make sense now because of the way something ended up developing. It looks different. There are areas where density makes sense in our community, and there are areas that it absolutely does not. And, but, to say from Austin, well, this is just absolutely how you need to develop, it doesn't work that way. Grandview looks different from Burleson. Burleson looks different from Dallas.
Well, what I saw when I read in that article, and again in other articles, is that they're all been about the zoning issue that you have communities that are either mandating homes that are larger than they think they should be because they want to have more dense, like you mentioned, in smaller homes. A lot of it also, part of that is they want to allow people to build homes on their property where homes already exist. Okay, now
Those
smaller mother-in-law suites, right? And out in the county,
accessory dwelling units.
yeah. And do I have a problem with that? Not really, but again, I don't think the Republicans are really considering the fact that they're not going to be in power forever. And I think that's also a thing in the national level as well. Every president thinks they're going to be the last one we'll ever have, so they'll move that envelope a little further out. And this is what is happening down in Austin. I remember had this happening in schools. Okay, when you were a student back in not the very near past,
Yes.
Very
Just
recently,
a few years ago.
Yeah, that's about that era of your era was about when the state of Texas started really intruding, so to speak.
Agree.
And you may have got out just in time. You're class of 02, right?
Right.
Okay, is that a secret?
No.
I've said that before to some people. Oh, you're the class. No, don't. Don't tell people how old I am. So, okay.
I'm 40.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And that is your.
I brag about my graduation year because I skipped a grade.
Yeah. Well, 2002 is about the first time they started implementing No Child Left Behind and all this. But it also was at the state level. They were more and more intrusive about how we taught.
You taught, yeah.
What curriculum we taught. No, we always had TEKs, but they got serious about those TEKs, about your generation of students, and that there'd be sanctions on schools that did not. And we had to visibly show that we were teaching the TEKs, like in our lesson plans, had to code it and all that other stuff. And then you start getting all these unfunded mandates, which they're so famous for about all these different things. And this is what's happening with the cities. The first one I really saw was like 8-9 years ago when they said no more red light cameras. I'm okay with that, but I also thought at the time that should be Burleson's decision.
Right.
All right, because we had them, right?
We did.
And I didn't like them.
Sure.
And I would have.
Yeah, but look how many people run red lights.
Yeah, well, the data showed that people are actually more dangerous because they're trying to beat the red lights.
Beat the red light. Yeah. I know. I remember. I read all the data too, and I definitely got one of those tickets, especially because you'd be turning right and you didn't pause long enough.
Yeah.
One of the times I was pulled over, I'll never forget this. The officer said, "Spell STOP and then turn." So now that sticks with me. STOP. Okay. And then I go through.
Yeah.
But like that's an example.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, whatever. But also another one was more recent where they basically said you as a city cannot add additional requirements upon like home construction or renovation services and things of that nature.
The one that irks me has to do with materials.
Right.
I think it was 2017. They passed legislation that said we couldn't restrict building materials unless it was, like a designated historical site or something like that. Like in Old Town, we can specify because it has historical significance. But like on 174, that. To say that we want our town to look nice and we don't want to use cheap, shoddy building materials, we want things to be, long-standing, that's not a bad thing. We want our town to look nice and be presentable. We don't want it looking like you just threw up this tin shack and now you're going to sell coffee out of it. We want things to be uniform and nice.
Well, real estate developers have an enormous amount of clout down in Austin.
Yes, they do.
And
the Builders Association, which is who pushed that. The Builders Association went.
There's Alex. How you doing this morning?
Alex knows these rants that we go on about, okay, how can we work with such and such that wants to come into town? And how can we ensure that what they're building is going to be able to age well, potentially sell well down the line if something falls through with that business?
Well, was one of the arguments against apartments is that they look nice today, but 10 years from now they won't. Well, hopefully, if they're well built, they'll last a little longer than 10 years. But now we can't
we can't really be restrictive on that. We want a quality product, and we can stress that as much as possible as staff, as those of us that are elected sitting at the dais, that we expect a certain level of product, but that, seeing that through, we only have so much that we can put behind it.
And that concerns me because also in that article it talks about, you mentioned it about
single family homes.
Yes, preventing people from our communities saying we want our single family homes to be a certain size, a certain acreage, or certain lot size. Now they're basically going to take that out of your hands. So
they could potentially, yeah.
Developers could put all these small homes.
When a bill has this low of number, this says SB 15.
Right.
The lower the bill number, the higher priority it is for the lieutenant governor or governor, and that's when you have to sweat a little.
Like the property tax bills, which we'll get to towards the end of the show, but. I don't like this because, first of all, I am a local power or local government type person. I think, if I'm not happy with what something the local government is doing, I know where to go.
Yep.
I can go holler at y'all or at the school district or at the county court or whatever.
Come down to commissioner's court or a city council meeting and let us know how you feel.
Right.
But when it's being dealt with in Austin, it's like, sure, we'll hand you off to this staff person, this low person on the totem pole, most likely an intern.
From UT intern.
Victoria Johnson, you've called for the fourth time this session. Thank you again. That's...
You were the one answering the phone, though, for Chet Edwards like that. Yeah. Said, oh, it's you again, Mr.
But our office took constituent services very seriously. If there's something that congressional member pressed on me, it was the importance of serving those that put you in that office.
Well, what I'm seeing, though, is that, let's say I'm unhappy with something, more and more it's going to be out of your hands.
It is.
And you're going to get the email saying, what are you doing about this? And nothing. And you say,
shrug.
Call, Helen Kerwin or whatever, or call
and then
Phil
in
King.
2 years, maybe that might be a priority for them to take up again, but most likely not.
Well,
it's like the farm bill last session where it was like, now in your neighborhood, they changed the rules that said, well, they can classify themselves as a farm. So this person living in a townhome potentially that's connected or in your neighborhood that's dense can have smelly animals or things that they used to not be able to have if they, hit these certain marks, which were pretty easy to hit. And think about home values. Think about noise. And there's not a lot we can do about that in some of these cases. This smell, damage to our water systems.
I spent a lot of time in my youth and over the years on my relative's farm, and what they told me what I was smelling was money. I said, well, okay, money stinks. But anyway, I remember having a discussion with another Burleson resident about who was in favor of that because of the tax situations.
And there are pieces, sometimes it's like they hear about something and they want to fix it, but then it becomes overarching. It's like, well, that spun out of control really fast.
And it's kind of like my point on the tariffs I was making yesterday. It's like there are times we need to address that issue with trading partners that are being uncooperative or taking advantage of us. But, now we're just bringing a sledgehammer to everything. And I think Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott and the rest are doing much the same thing, is that okay, you may have communities that are so restrictive that
it's hard to develop there.
And it's also discriminatory, unless, in some cases, I don't want to I'll pull out one community, maybe South Lake, all right, because it's probably very expensive to build a home in South Lake. And not just the real estate, but they're probably not going to allow a lot of multifamily housing. They're not going to allow a lot of housing units like we have that Hunter's Glen or whatever it's called down on Renfro, that 270 units or whatever. You probably don't see that in South Lake or Grapevine, Colleyville that much, but and so maybe that's something that could be addressed, but we're not doing that here in Burleson.
We really work hard to have diversified housing opportunities. We want there to be something for everyone in this town, whether you're retiring, whether you're empty nesting, or you're just starting out your brand new family. There should be a type of home that is available for you in our town. That's what we want. And, going back to the type of development, our focus is diversifying our tax base, providing job opportunities so that you live in Burleson, you work in Burleson, and not only just work here. We want you to have a salary that you can actually live on and raise a family on.
How about shop here, Alex? You think we should
shop here?
What do you think? Shop local.
No.
He's got me to the point now. If I leave the city limits to do any business, I need to wear a disguise.
You do.
Because I don't want his spy network to call me out.
I feel the same heat whenever I'm shopping somewhere else.
But as far as the development, it's like the other counterpoint is developers should be able to do what they want with the property. Well, that's true to a point. Okay, you live in a community. You don't live in some sort of silo all by yourself, and so
we don't want a cement plant right next to a elementary school or across the, while you're grabbing your morning coffee. There's some industrial business going on,
and that's the problem we have with a lot of this is that people talk about property rights and whatever else. Property rights exist certainly. Being the old conservative that I am, but they do have a limit. There is a borderline between just being able to do whatever you want to do, and not impose upon hardships upon your neighbors. And that I just get concerned when we have these massive sweeping legislation that just tries to address an issue that can be handled with the chisel, and they bring the sledgehammer. All right. And as far as other things they're talking about down in Austin about taking away from y'all is also tax issues. All right. Now, there's two things I was going to bring up about taxes. Last week we talked with the mayor about the CAD, about the Central Appraisal District. And I'd like to visit about that in a minute. And also about what would happen to Burleson if they got rid of the property tax. But as far as the Central Appraisal District, if y'all weren't listening last week, you should, doggone it. But or pick up check the show out from last week, and you'll see that they're going to a 3-year appraisal as opposed to a year by year. And it's our mayor's contention that's going to cost us over the next few years $6 million. It's
going to cost us.
And so why don't you address that issue?
Sure. So by moving to a 3-year appraisal, basically, when we have annual appraisals, we are able as a municipality to capture up to 3.5% of that growth. So your appraisal grew 10%. I'm just saying we can capture 3 to 3.5% of that. And that goes toward our maintenance and operation budget. So that is how we hire and fire. That's our turning the lights on, our day-to-day operation money. We are desperately in need of more police officers right now, and we need firefighters. We're planning for a 4th ambulance and in the future, a 4th fire station.
I was going to ask you about the need for additional policemen in particular. I agree we do need them, but is there a formula that you go by, or is it Billy Cordell saying, look, my men and women are overstressed. They can't make the calls.
There are a lot of formulas, looking at overtime and it's over my head.
So it's a lot of it's quantifiable. It's not just somebody feeling I feel like to hire and cut more people. There's some objective measures by which you use for that.
100%. Okay. And there's things that you give up. That overall, we have to look at the service that we provide our citizens, and that's in every facet. If it's public safety, if it's roads, if it's trash, all of the services that we provide cost. And either you look, if that money is not going to grow with the population growth, if it's not being reevaluated except for every 3 years, the only addition to our bottom line that we can expect is new construction growth. So over a 3-year time, that's maybe 3%, but then you look at fire calls alone raised 23% last year. So 23% in call volume, but we only grew 3% in population.
You kind of tie that back to some of these other buildings code standards. If you can't handle that yourself and they're using cheaper materials, that's going to add to that number of fire calls.
Right.
You know?
I mean, everything plays, I mean, it all piggybacks on each other. It's not just one lane. You know, you can't just look at one thing in a silo. You have to look at everything. And either if we're going to have the significant decrease to our growth that we're expecting with these 3-year appraisals, then we're going to either have to look at reducing service or looking at additional revenue sources.
Yeah, well, that's going to be more difficult, isn't it? If they do it with property taxes.
They aren't easy conversations, but you know, we live here for a reason. I chose to raise my family in Burleson because I grew up here and I knew what we had to offer as a community. I chose to serve in this role because I believe in what we offer as a community. And it's a very hard pill to swallow to say, well, I want to see a reduction in services. I don't. You know, when I call 911, if it's because, you know, someone may have been inside my house or, you know, I need help from the police department, I appreciate when they're able to get to my door within a certain time frame. Or if, gosh forbid, my house is on fire, or, you know, I am very familiar with having to call 911 because of health issues and taking a ride in the ambulance because of my allergies. And so, you know, those aren't things that I take for granted. And I want that I live here because of those services, and I would hope that we're able to extend that to every person who chooses this community, that they believe in the services that we provide. But those services cost money.
Yes. And when the Central Appraisal District goes to a 3-year appraisal, their response is they're trying to prevent people from having their taxes raised and make it more difficult to keep their homes and all this other business.
No, and I, as a homeowner, completely agree with that. It stinks when I see that tax bill and I'm like, okay, you know, I got to swallow this and plan. But until the state legislature truly considers what other viable options there are to property tax to fund things like police, fire, street maintenance, water and sewer, parks, and all of these things, until we figure out another system, we as local government are not going to be able to significantly impact that. But what we can do, and what we do is diversify our tax base to the best of our ability, which is focusing on our industrial park, you know, bringing in manufacturing. And Alex and his team do a phenomenal job of that. And that's where, you know, we can focus. Our sales tax in our community, we have a lot of retail in our community. And so sales tax have in the past significantly helped in our budget. But last year it was flat. And it may decrease this year. So without additional appraisal increases annually, and with a decrease in sales tax funding, how do we grow the absolutely necessary services? We talk time and time again when I'm on this show about street maintenance alone.
Yeah.
You know, once a street is built, it moves out of the capital. So we have to figure out a way to maintain those streets at a level that is acceptable out of our maintenance and operation money.
Yeah, like you're doing on Hidden Creek. I think of y'all every time I drive by it. You're inconveniencing me. But whatever.
But
I know we need
it's getting fixed.
Yeah, I know.
And, you know, we expect a certain level of service. That's why we chose this community. And so, therefore, we have to also balance. And I'm not saying be frivolous. I think we have been ultra conservative when it comes to this council and the last few councils, you know, reducing the tax rate when we could. But in my honest opinion, I think we reduced it too much arbitrarily.
Well, it has put y'all in an uncomfortable position.
It has. Now we have to choose. I mean, we're looking at a capital improvement plan right now, and those are our 5-year plans that, you know, how we're going to build and develop as a city. And for the next 5 years, honestly, what we're looking at is the PD expansion, because that's already been approved, and some equipment purchases. That's kind of where we're at right now.
We were talking about that expansion about, you know, talking on a more global issue. These tariffs are going to make that maybe more expensive to build.
I am so afraid.
You know, because the steel tariffs are one of the main targets.
Right. We're supposed to start going vertical in 2026. If we don't get that steel in before these tariffs, I am honestly afraid.
Well, yeah.
And then where does that put us? Our PD is busting at the seams, and anticipating this new building. And I mean, and we need to plan and start allocating, anticipating allocating funds toward a fire station 4 out on the west side of town. All of these things add up, but we need them. So what do you do? Well,
I'm also concerned about two things about, city financing. One is the tariffs. Yeah. Another is the elimination of the property tax. And so you're talking about like a double whammy, because on the consumption side, you're talking about a significant increase in out-of-pocket expense. And the people that support the elimination of property tax, they bring up the fact that, a lot of people are being taxed out of their homes. And I understand that's not a trivial thing.
It's not. It's real.
It's a real thing. On the other hand, I also am concerned about the middle class, basically, when they're going to be buying the cost, they may not be getting the benefit of the lower or the extra money they're getting from lower property taxes or zero property taxes, particularly if they rent. But they're still going to be asked to spend more money at Walmart and that kind of thing.
We're going to have to make it up somewhere. These services we have to provide, and the money has to come from somewhere. And I'm not saying I follow the property tax Facebook group. I have lunch with them and visit with them often. But what is the alternative? And that's that's an Austin conversation. But what we can do, like I said, locally is work very hard to diversify our tax base so that it's the weight is not all on the homeowners.
Have you had a conversation with Greg Cooper?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because he really knows what he's talking about.
Does.
And he's not an ideologue, which I appreciate. He is in favor of the elimination of the property tax, but he doesn't just automatically support every bill that's floating out there. He has his certain parameters of what he wants to support. And so some of the bills he doesn't, because they don't adequately address the other side of the issue. My concern, and I keep bringing it up with him, I'm going to have one again in May, is, the people that probably going to be most impacted by the increase of these sales taxes going to be least able to handle it.
I agree with
if you're like a working class mom and you got 3 kids and maybe child support and at most, and they need shoes, the kids need shoes or school clothes, but they're going to be significantly more expensive, and they may or not be getting much benefit out of a reduction of property tax.
Sure.
And so that's my concern. And I tell you, Alex, I don't know, I need to talk to him on the show because I don't want to put words in his mouth. I just imagine, though, that it is going to make it even more critical that we shop local, right? We're going to probably build a wall around Burleson. No, you can't go to Crowley. You got to shop here, There's going to because there the revenue is going to be even more necessary at the consumption end of it.
Absolutely.
And I just have real concerns about that. And I don't think the funding part of it is nearly as well addressed as the elimination part, because the elimination part sounds great. I mean, it give me about $300 more a month to spend on stuff. But will I spend that $300 or not?
Will you be able to?
Well, and again, the people that support this property tax said it's a way of controlling your own tax expenditures.
I do understand that too.
It's like you don't have to buy these things. You can, and therefore pay the tax or not, and therefore you won't have your money taken from you by some tax district or whatever. All right, Alex Phillips says 100% as our small businesses are starting to feel the pain and pressure. And again, you add the tariff issues. Now, I don't know how long they're going to last, but they're not going to wait tomorrow.
I've seen some posts from boutique owners that okay, well, I reduced the amount that I ordered and I'm doing all that I can to source locally that I can. But there's an element of, this is something that I kind of prided my boutique on, and now it costs me this much in tariffs to get it. And it's less product that she hopes she can turn around. And, I don't envy them. I do not envy small business owners. There's a lot to juggle.
Right. Most of the clothing is made out of country, and, I haven't talked to like Otto, how it'll affect his restaurant business, but there are ingredients and stuff that he imports. I haven't talked to John over at the roofing folks at OPRO, but a lot of that raw material to make roofs comes from Canada, actually. On and on and on. So, it's going to be tough. And I already addressed the tariff issue from a national level already, but as far as
But
as far
it
as
impacts
locally,
us locally.
it's going to impact us a lot.
We are building and growing as a community, and we need to be to address the growth, and it's going to be significantly restricted.
Alex has put this up for us, and I see it on his Facebook posting. Spend $20 a week locally, and you'll spend $1,040 a year into this economy. Well, I got that covered. Well, I mean, the grocery store at least, but he's got me so paranoid that I hardly ever buy outside of Burleson now.
I really try to stay local.
I mean,
we just have such awesome businesses in town that I love to support. And they turn around and they support our community. We don't see Sam's on the back of the baseball jersey, when we cut the ribbon for all the AstroTurf fields the other night. It's local businesses that are feeding and fueling our community. And so it's important that we support them back.
Plus the fact is that I personally, I always have shopped local because being a public school teacher, they were paying my salary. If their taxes
That's
are,
fair.
and I wanted to keep them in business,
Sure.
So I try to keep them as local as much as possible. And now that we've expanded so many things, it's even less necessary to go out of Burleson.
Agree.
But I tell you, again, get back to this point, if you get rid of sales tax, property taxes and make it all on sales tax, boy, the competition is going to be even more difficult between communities.
Agree.
And the smaller communities are going to really hurt.
They are.
Because, Joshua's great, but they don't have a big retail presence.
Or Grandview.
Or Godly.
Or Keene.
Yeah.
I mean,
Keene didn't even have a grocery store. And so they do all the shopping in Cleburne. And Burleson. And Burleson, or Alvarado or something like that. But, these smaller communities around us, they're going to have a real difficult time surviving, but if it's all strictly on sales tax. And I'm thinking, doesn't this register with you guys down in Austin? I mean,
I don't know what registers with them in Austin.
All right, I'll call out Harold and Kerwin. The majority of her district is rural and small town. We're probably the biggest town in her representation zone, right? District 58 still?
Probably.
Yeah, we're probably the biggest town they have. But she also represents Glenrose, her hometown. She also represents, small towns like Keene and Alvarado or Rio Vista and things like that. And they're going to get, some of these small towns are really going to be hurt by some of this. I'm like, hadn't you not made this connection? Yeah. All right. So, I am trying to get Cooper to connect me with Miss Kerwin to have a interview on the show, probably be done on Zoom since she's pretty busy right now.
Or after session.
Well, we're going to have several special sessions. I can tell you that right now. Because we're not going to get all this passed.
No way.
And if it doesn't get passed, Abbott's going to bring them back, and they're going to hammer on those property taxes. And the thing about it is, I teach this in my government classes, that unlike the regular session, when it comes to a special session, it's all at the discretion of the governor.
Right.
And so
he says we're only focusing on this, then that's all they're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I'll be talking about probably, they're going to probably talk about this and
school vouchers.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The school choice is the word I was trying to in my head, like school choice. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, which we haven't even we don't have time really to get into all of that that's a different deal.
But I do appreciate that, there's such an economic development piece that goes with our schools. We are able to recruit businesses because we say, our schools are really good here and they will be your future employees. So come here because we can give you the workforce.
Say, Alex also says that fills some potholes or helps hire PD or FD. Every penny counts.
Sure does.
Absolutely. And,
I mentioned a second ago that sales tax has significantly helped our budget in previous years to enable us to continue to address growing needs.
Like the reconstruction, I guess, of Hidden Creek, which I appreciate now. I mean, because you were right, that road was coming to pieces.
It was awful.
And if we didn't have the money for it, it wouldn't have gotten better on its own.
It's only going to get worse. And we still have to drive it.
And I still think of a road, I'm sure you've thought of it many times, that piece on Dobson, on the, what would it be, the south side of Hidden Creek, going into near Russell Art Farm. That's like going four-wheeling.
And that's somewhere down the line going to be a 4-lane divided road at some point, but that's a tech stop project.
Yes, I've seen, this is in Burleson, this is in Fort Worth, but they're going to be widening some roads over near the airport because I seen all the trees I couldn't cut down, which is I thought kind of tragic, but there you go. But anyway, that's off the topic. But the thing about it is, you're right though. If I guess this school choice thing does have an impact because if the schools suffer, which I really have investigated into this issue, and I've come down against school vouchers. All right, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this objectively, not just react at it on it towards school vouchers as a public school teacher that I was, and say they're all bad. I want to know why they're bad. And this is one reason I don't like them, because it is going to impact the schools, and it is going to make it even that much more difficult for towns to attract
businesses.
Yeah. And, you say, well, you have competition in schools. What competition are you going to have in schools in Grandview? They're not big enough to have 3 high schools. They'd all compete with each other.
I mean, you just look at us now in Burleson alone. We do have some excellent private schools, and those families that choose them love them. But they're not big enough to take. I mean, they're restricted on how many kids they can take.
Well, I sent my kids to Holy Cross when they were younger because I wanted them, not because I didn't think well of BISD. I thought the best part of BISD actually is our elementary schools.
I agree.
But I also wanted them to have a faith-based education. And I did not expect, nor would I require the public schools to provide that. And there's also some bills that would do that too. And that's a whole other topic about, requiring certain religious instruction in schools. And let's I'll save that for another show. But that was our choice. Sure. And I didn't expect my neighbor who pays school taxes and sends his kids to public schools, I didn't expect them to chip in on my kids' Holy Cross tuition. That was my choice. And the bills they have now would benefit most of the kids I taught at Southwest Christian, who already have the wherewithal to go there.
And then what are the strings? Because there's always strings with government money. What are the strings that will come with when you're using government funds, public funds, to go to a certain institution?
Well, Mr. Cooper and I talked about this on a previous show, not the last one we was on, but maybe a couple of months ago. And he was opposed to a lot of the voucher bills, not because he's opposed to vouchers, but he was opposed to the fact that with the vouchers would come like standardized testing and required curriculum and things of that nature. And he said that's kind of defeating the point. He didn't want a state takeover of private schools. Now, when I was teaching Southwest Christian, the curriculum was legitimate, and we had highly trained, highly qualified, credentialed teachers. This wasn't like some snake handling bunch in the back of a gas station. Like you get some private schools in DFW area that are kind of sketchy. But this was a high quality school, still is. But I don't want the state involved in that. And and the state may get involved in not just testing and all that, but interpretations of gospel or scripture that they will allow and disallow. There's a lot of concerns I have about that. But
you said something that impacts, circling it back to local government is what is appropriate. There's things that need to be fixed, and we should be evaluating how we provide services all the time.
Alex says it's a second question companies ask: how good are the schools in the area? It's not just for their employees; it's also their families that are coming to work here.
They're going to come work here.
Yeah, and they want
their future employee base. It's the people that they do already employ. What kind of school district are they going to be able to send their kids to? But
I've never had a real estate conversation on this show, whether it be Jeff or Shandy Stocksdill or Alexis Bedecker. Alexis. I don't want to say Alexis Bedecker. Sorry. Is that's a prime conversation piece, even for people that don't have kids.
Yeah. Well, because you're going to be even if you don't have children in the system, or you don't intend to have children, or your children are already out of the system, it's part of a quality community. And that's what we strive ourselves on in Burleson, that we are well-rounded. We have something here for everyone, but we're turning out good kids that are going to be, working good jobs, contributing citizens that are then, it's all cyclical. They're going to go out into the workforce. They're going to hopefully make a well-paying job and make a good employee that then comes back and contributes in a way. Maybe you end up working for the city that you are living in. Maybe
it's much more of a possibility.
You're shopping there. You're doing business there.
Well, you probably remember back in your high school days, how many of your high school peers planned on living in Burleson.
Right, none of us.
None. You were all going to go to Manhattan or
we
whatever.
were going somewhere,
you,
and
you
now
go
we're
to a big
back.
city or
I know.
something. You know,
My dad makes fun of me all the time.
Yeah, but
I love work. I love living here, and you know, as soon as Philip and I were ready to start planning for the future, it's like we're moving back to Burleson, and our kids will go to Burleson schools because that's where I grew up.
So Philip was on board with this, was he?
Yeah.
Was he on board, or you got him on board?
But he was on board.
Okay, well, he seems like a pretty easy.
He's pretty easygoing.
Yeah, he's like,
but
whatever.
he was very adamant that our kids would go to public schools, so you better pick a community where you believe in their public schools.
That's good for him.
We're both public school kids.
Yeah.
And then we both went to state universities.
Which one did he go to?
North Texas.
Okay, and so, you know, as far as your kids
he
going
lived
to
at
state
home,
universities.
and he, you know, worked at UPS and commuted to UNT. I mean, he has that type of upbringing, and that's what we expect our kids to understand too.
So no private schools for you.
According to my husband, no. I would have loved for my kids to go to a Catholic school because it was always my dream, but they're far. I mean, they're not, the closest one is St. Andrews off of I-20. I mean, that's not realistic for us.
I don't know if my friend's still on their board, but he was for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
I love the school, and I know a number of families that go there, but I love Burleson. I picked here because I believe in our schools. I mean, we have so many options, and they're constantly evolving, and they're responsive to the community. You know, our staff at the city, we meet and converse with the school district. You know, this is a need that we're seeing. Okay, how can we fill it at the public school level so that kids are potentially graduating ready to go out in the workforce and not just be able to work at McDonald's, but be able to run companies and learn and grow in the future.
Well, and how many communities have something like the Burleson Opportunity Fund? I've seen a couple of Facebook ads I've shared.
We are envied by so many communities
yes,
because we are turning out kids ready to do things that are impactful.
Well, and then of course you have like the early college program, et cetera, and I hate to say all that put at risk.
You can go to public school and graduate with an associate's degree in college, and then all you have to do is focus on what you want to focus on.
It saved your parents a ton of money.
You can save so much money, but also get down. Now, there are definitely people that turn out and they go, I don't really know what I want to do. This kind of interests me, but this does too.
Oh, yeah.
But I got out of high school knowing exactly what I wanted to do. And I had to go back through algebra and this and this and this. I'm like, ugh, okay, let me get these basics over again. Even though I did them in high school, let me do them again. And then my last 2 years, I got to do all the geeky political science and history classes that I wanted. And I loved the last 2 years of college because it was what I wanted to focus on.
Well, I can't tell you how many kids I taught at Hill. You know, I'm not with Hill, right? And again, I always stress it was a very, very friendly parting. It was just time for me to go because I'd burned out after all that teaching at Hill and BHS, et cetera.
Sure.
So it had nothing to do with Hill. It was just me. But as far as all the BOF kids, and you're right, I've talked to other people in other communities like, what, you're paying for your kids' college? Well, yeah, pretty much. You know,
we take education seriously because it provides opportunity. We're trying to turn people out and ready to go. Like they can provide for themselves and for their families. They receive well-paying jobs and career paths. That's the most important, just so that you're not feeling lost. You have a way. Let us help you find it.
But really, Burleson really did suffer a tremendous blow when Sarah Carlson left. She's actually watching right now. Hope you're doing okay, Sarah, down in College Station.
I know, boo.
I know, yeah, but anyway, she's down there.
We'll always be home to her. They'll come back.
I hope so. But how you doing? I hope, Sarah, you're doing well down there. Hope you're enjoying the humidity. Anyway, but speaking of great communities, let's talk about what's going on in the community because there's a couple of things coming up pretty soon. On April 26th, we have the Walk for Life over on Bailey Lake Park with the Next Step Women's Center. I just love that outfit. I really do. Megan and Summer do such a good job, and they do such good work. And every time they come on the show, they bring stats with them, and it's like 10 to 15% more business, so to speak, than they had the last time we talked. I mean, they're busting at the seams as well, and so they're hoping one day to have a Capitol building project. Same with our friends at Center for ASD. Now, I don't know what the status is. Lisa's going to be on the show fairly soon. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but hopefully by that time we'll have like some clarity as to where their facilities are going to be. But back to Next Step.
This is coming up. Also we had to, because last Saturday, all the rain and crazy weather that blew in. So we had to move Trash Bash to the 26th. So there will probably be lots of people around the park, whether they're walking for Walk for Life or they're picking up trash.
They can do both.
They can do both.
Okay, there you go.
While you walk, you pick up.
Well, if you're not going to walk, you could sponsor a walker, or if you just want to donate, they'll be glad to take your money. So, they're always looking for funding, like all our groups are. Yesterday I had in the second show I did had the 3 leaders of the food pantries, and there's some concerns, but that's for that show. Also, the next day is the Vineyards and Vibes for Harvest House. I'll have Amber on next Tuesday by herself.
I love that event. And they have a big headliner this year. Somebody fun.
Phil Hamilton.
Ooh.
He was a local guy.
Yeah.
And last year was Susie and her crew.
Yes.
And they're really pretty good. I mean, people say, it's Susie, of course. But no, I'm impressed with her,
I agree.
frankly, because, we're prepared to like her because we like Susie. But
then you're wowed.
Yeah, okay. But hey, you really are good.
I know, right?
So there you are.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's a fun event. I strongly encourage people to attend.
The tickets are $25. So you're on the QR code, go on the webpage. It'll be $30 if you show up. And they'll have some auction items and get yourself a glass of wine from Lone Oak, which is always a good deal. Lost Oak, I'm sorry. They used to be called Lone Oak. Mm-hmm. Lost Oak. Mm-hmm. But anyway, also, May 10th, we'll have the City on the Hill. Hang on, I'll be right there with you. Right? City on the Hill, Lisa Schwartz and her crew over at Crazy Eights, over at BHS. I tell you what, you ever go to Vegas, take her with you. You know why? 2 years ago, Armageddon Storm was heading for that particular May Day. And she, on this show that Thursday, prayed that the rain would go away. And then the clouds parted and went north and south. And it was a nice day for her to have Crazy Eights. I'm going to take you and tell me, okay, what number to put my chips on? Because, she must have, a real connection.
She has an in.
Yeah, she has an in on the Almighty. Also, back to the 88.3, they're doing their pledge drive this week. Normally they will be promoting the shows, but they're focusing on their pledge drive. Sure. So if you have the opportunity, tune in. My wife loves this station. And I'll have Hooper on probably after all this is over with, probably early summer or something like that. And also, as far as community radio, this show will be on tomorrow night and Thursday at 1. Tonight I have the ladies from yesterday, the Harvest House, Promises, and Crowley House of Hope. They'll be on at 6 and at 1 tomorrow. And your show will be on at 6 tomorrow night and 1 o'clock Thursday.
Fun.
Yeah, lots going on the radio station. It's just kind of hanging in there right now. I'm hoping to change the listening habits of a whole community, so it's going to take more than a day.
It's going to take a little bit.
Yeah, but it's all right.
Well, yeah.
60s through 80s music, too, all that stuff. All right.
Tough time to do small business, but we appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, I suppose, but my risk is minimal, so I'm not like these other people. You know what? Really though, when I was thinking about doing the radio, I'd done it like 3 years ago, and I kind of did it in a different way, and it didn't work out at all. And I was thinking though, back in November, I deal with these business owners all the time, and they took a real risk. And then on my BNI meeting, we had this little pithy little quote at the end of every meeting, and this one was, "Every start of a new business is an act of courage." I thought, you're right.
It's true.
So I'm going to give it a shot. And if it fails, I'm going to give it 6 months. And if I'm not doing any better, then I'll think about it then. But I'm going to, whatever. But why don't you finish this off? Tell us what we need to know, how to get involved, what to be looking for in the media, the news about this, what the topics we talked about.
Yeah. I would say watch Austin. The things that they do in Austin can very much impact the way we do business in Burleson. And it's important. They're making big decisions, and they do every legislative session. More and more, they're coming after local control. And we need that because we're the most accountable to the people. Like you've said before, when you have a question or you have an issue, you know who to reach out to. You're going to run into us at the grocery store, or you're going to give us a shout. And so we're here, we're responsive. And I really appreciate my colleagues on the council. We have some tough decisions ahead, but I believe we can work together, and nothing will be made in haste.
Well, particularly call Helen Kerwin. Not to be too crass about it, but
she's our representative.
Yeah, but Phil King supposedly represents us in the Senate, but that's not going to do any good. Dan Patrick runs the Senate with an iron hand.
And
Period.
Representative Cook, too. He has a part of Burleson. So reach out to them, let them know, and tell them the things that you support as well, because they need to hear both, what you're feeling, what's on your mind. But local control is important because we're responsive to the people.
I mean, it sounds like there's a tremendous amount going on. Local control, school choice, property taxes. So we'll definitely have special sessions. Well, next week on Monday, I have Charles Hudgens he's running for Joshua school council, whatever. I'm getting confused. No, he's running for a place in the school board for Joshua. Tuesday, I have Amber, like I mentioned, Amber Case from Harvest House. And I bet you didn't know this, Josh, but you have 3 shows next week, buddy.
Oh, sweet.
All right. And then Thursday, I have a couple of people you may know, Adam Russell and Larry Scott.
Fun.
Yeah, and they'll be asking them these same questions. I may just keep the paper unless you want to take it with you.
Oh, no, that'd be good.
I'm going to
Get
say
their perspective.
Yeah, and see what they got to say. And also check in with Larry and see how his health is doing. He seems to be doing better.
He does.
It's good. And maybe you'll be out of that boot someday. Who knows?
Someday. I know.
You're just fragile. It's from kicking all those butts on the council.
The sad thing is they want me to have surgery on the other foot later this year.
You going to do it?
Philip says I can't chicken out because if we do it in the same year, it's buy one, get one. We've maxed out on all the insurance stuff.
Right there with you, Philip. I've done many decisions like that
he told
as
me
well.
I can't chicken out, but I really want to. The worst part has been the non-weight bearing for 6 weeks was brutal. And I had crutches and a knee cart, and I had more crashes on the knee cart than I care to admit.
I'm going to speculate at the Johnson home. You're all involved in everything, but y'all probably have a pretty traditional home, don't you?
We do.
I could see that. That's good. That's good.
It's fun.
I see your daughter's very involved in dance.
Very.
Yeah, it's good
and
for
Oliver's, he's
started baseball, didn't he?
He does. Yeah.
Oh, good.
He's there.
Really.
My thing is, as long as you're having fun, it's just about moving your body and working your brain in a different way. Just do something.
All right. Sherry Scott says, do it now and get on with living life large. Okay.
Oh, no. Oh,
I'd like to have Sherry Scott on the show, but she won't. You talk about blessing boxes or whatever else, but she ain't going to come near it. I mean, one time one time she came with Larry and she sat over when we had that couch and she's... she'd rather eat ground glass and come on the mic. So,
well, not just that, but she's been a park board member for a number of years. She's really got a pulse on the community and cares about serving.
Well, that blessing boxes, I mean, that was strictly something that she was motivated to do. It wasn't like, she didn't get any government funding for it. So,
and it warms my heart when I see somebody putting things in there, and when I've seen people, accessing it.
Those ladies I talked to yesterday could tell you.
It's important.
Boy, it's getting more and more, too.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress, and we're running out of time. And Josh has got lots going on today, don't you?
Don't get me started.
Yeah. Okay, when you started. Okay.
Well, appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.
Look forward to coming back.
All right, we'll set up a time. So what is this, April 8th? Something, probably towards the end of May, you'll be pretty busy, wouldn't you think? Well, you have that.
Out of school.
Yeah. Well, when the kids are out of school, let's do this again.
Okay.
Because I know there's a lot of into school stuff, and then you got
I'm actually heading to the school right now. I've got to go serve lunch.
And you got the honey tour and the carnival coming and all that business. So,
lots of fun stuff.
All right, so we'll see you on Monday with Mr. Hudgens, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.